Colonel Jacobs stood hunched over the operations table, eyes locked on the digital map. Red flares blinked along grid Echo 3, marking enemy movement, fast coordinated, closing in. U.S. infantry was pinned near a rocky ridge with no armor support, no air cover, and only minutes before, they'd be overwhelmed. He jabbed a finger at the screen. "We need close air support now. I don't care what jet. Any jet will do." The room buzzed with urgency. Controllers scrambled, flipping through availability rosters. F-15s were too far. Raptors were grounded with technical faults. Only one aircraft was ready and fueled on the nearby runway. "Sir," a controller said, hesitating. "We've got one bird ready for launch, an A-10 Warthog. It's Captain Riley Jameson." Jacobs didn't even look up. "Send it." That was all Riley needed. She was already halfway to the hangar when the call came through. Her squadron called her Hawk, not just because she flew, but because she hunted. Where others climbed, she dove. Where others hesitated, she fired. Her reputation in the A-10 community was unmatched, but that community had long been pushed aside in favor of stealth and speed. As she strapped into the cockpit, Riley ran through her mental checklist with the muscle memory of 1,000 hours in combat airspace. The crew chief gave a thumbs up. Her Warthog's twin engines whined to life, a beast waking from slumber. She rolled out. The control tower blinked green. Her bird thundered down the runway and leapt into the sky. Back in the ops tent, Colonel Jacobs sipped lukewarm coffee, watching the blue icon of Riley's jet break away from base and slice toward the hot zone. It was only then someone leaned close and asked, "Sir, did you say any jet?" Jacobs raised a brow, confused. "Yeah, you just deployed an A-10. He blinked, then went pale. "God help her." Riley didn't need help. She needed targets. As the valley came into view, her heart rate slowed. The battlefield was chaos, plumes of smoke rising from burning brush tracer rounds, arcing upward. A handful of U.S. soldiers, boxed behind a rock outcrop, red dots swarming in every direction. "Echo 3, this is Hawk. Visual on friendlies. Got company." Through static, a strained voice answered. "Copy, Hawk. We're getting chewed out here. You alone." Riley leveled her wings. "You'll be fine." She flipped the armament master switch. Her HUD lit up with targets. She nosed down. The A-10 screamed like a banshee from above, its iconic GAU-8 Avenger cannon beginning to spin. Then it spoke. The sound was something beyond mechanical, deep chattering thunder that echoed off the canyon walls. A stream of 30mm rounds tore into enemy ranks with surgical brutality. Trucks exploded. Fighters dove for cover. Trees splintered. The air filled with dust and disbelief. Riley didn't climb. She swooped. "Target 1 down." She radioed, looping for another pass. Inside the command center, the room went dead silent. The big screen lit up with video from a drone overhead. The A-10 carved across the valley like a bird of prey, smoke trailing from the battlefield in her wake. Jacobs leaned closer, hands gripping the edge of the table. He'd never seen a Warthog work like this. Down below, the pinned troops peeked out. One of them, a 22-year-old private named Carson, dropped his rifle mid-shot. "That's a hog." His squad leader nodded in stunned relief. "That ain't just a hog. That's Hawk." They watched as Riley flew barely 30 feet above the ground, performing maneuvers that defied the laws of what should have been possible for a machine that size. She turned sharp over the ridge, then let the gun rip again. Enemy fighters fled into the trees. Smoke rose in thick black towers. "Taking fire from the west ridge." The ground unit called. "Copy," Riley answered. "Mark your position with smoke." Seconds later, she spotted the orange cloud bursting near the hillside. Through her scope, silhouettes of enemies darted between rocks, some with RPGs. She lined up the shot. The gun spun, fired. The ridge disintegrated. One RPG operator flew backward like a rag doll. The rest vanished. Incoming threat suppressed, she confirmed calmly. Her hands never shook. Her focus never broke. In the tent, Jacobs whispered, "She's controlling the whole damn battlefield." Riley checked fuel. Not great. She'd been flying at full throttle, low altitude with multiple gun runs. But she wasn't leaving, not yet. She spotted a technical vehicle creeping up behind the friendly position, a Toyota pickup with a mounted heavy gun, perfect for shredding survivors. Riley rolled the A-10 nearly sideways, banked hard, and dove again. This time she got close enough to see the driver's eyes before she fired. The truck exploded into a rolling ball of flame. "Threat neutralized," she called. "Copy, Hawk. You saved our asses," the ground unit replied. "Just another Tuesday," she said, though her brow glistened with sweat. Finally, 2 F-15s arrived overhead. "Control, this is Talon Flight. We're on station." "Hawk to Talon. Welcome to the party. Scene's clear, but still hot. Maintain altitude. I'm Winchester and low on fuel." "Copy that," one of the Talon pilots replied. "We'll babysit. You've done the heavy lifting." As she turned toward base, Riley looked down one last time. Below, soldiers were waving their rifles, jumping up and down, clapping as her battered warthog passed overhead like a guardian angel made of metal and fire. She touched down later. The ground crew rushed over. The A-10 was scorched, one flap pitted from shrapnel, the nose bearing soot from spent cannon rounds. Still, it stood tall, imposing, ugly, perfect. Riley climbed down, nodded to her crew chief, and walked toward the tent without a word. When she entered, the whole room turned. Colonel Jacobs was waiting, arms folded, jaw tight. She stopped in front of him. He stared for a long moment. "You were the first on scene," he finally said. "Alone." Riley gave a half smile. "That's usually how it works." He nodded slowly, then sighed. "I said any jet. I didn't expect you." She looked him square in the eye. "Then you shouldn't have said any jet." Smoke curled off Riley's warthog as she taxied off the runway. Mechanics swarmed the bird, checking the heat on the gun barrel and scanning for visible damage. The cannon had fired so many rounds, it glowed faintly orange, still hot from the wrath it delivered. She didn't linger. Helmet under one-arm flight suit streaked with sweat and soot, Riley strode straight toward the ops tent. People parted as she passed. No one spoke. Not yet. Inside, Colonel Jacobs stood at the map table again. The red enemy dots that had once surrounded Echo 3 were gone, all of them. The colonel looked up. She stopped 3 feet in front of him. "We lost 0, he said quietly. 0 casualties, not one of them even scratched." Riley nodded. "They did their part. I did mine." He studied her face. There was no pride, no gloating, just precision, professionalism, and a faint layer of grime that marked every close air support run she'd ever flown. "You understand," he said, voice low. "I was expecting raptors, maybe eagles." She met his eyes. "Sir, raptors don't loiter. F-15s don't turn inside a canyon. They don't carry 1/100 rounds of God's judgment either." He exhaled through his nose. She was right. He'd known it before she landed. "Go debrief," he said, "and hell of a job." She nodded once, turned, and left. At a secure forward operating base near the valley, the troops of Echo 3 disembarked from a Chinook chopper. Their faces were grimy eyes, wide hearts still pounding. They had survived something that should have ended in a massacre. Private Carson stepped off the ramp and immediately scanned the skies. The sun was setting orange, bleeding into purple. "She really flew that thing alone?" he asked his squad leader. Staff Sergeant Vega clapped him on the shoulder. "Not just flew it, man. She owned it. You ever hear an A-10 cannon up close before?" Carson shook his head. "Feels like the earth ripping in half." Vega said, grinning now, "And she made it sing like a damn orchestra." Back at base, Riley entered the debriefing room. Screens flickered with aerial footage. Her gun runs were being reviewed from drone angles and helmet cams. She sat down still in her suit. Major Rhodes, the debrief officer, raised an eyebrow. "We counted 27 confirmed kills, 3 vehicle strikes, 0 friendly fire. You hit that anti-air with 1 pass." "I missed the first burst," Riley corrected. Rhodes blinked. "That was your miss. I was off by a meter," she said, corrected on the second burst. There was a pause. Then Rhodes leaned back in his chair. "You're ridiculous." She cracked the smallest of smiles. "You should see me on a bad day." Meanwhile, Jacobs reviewed the mission video alone. He paused the footage where Riley dove at the RPG team, her A-10, nearly skimming treetops. He rewound, watched again. Every maneuver was deliberate, every strike efficient. He reached for the old mission doctrine binder, one that emphasized high-altitude superiority fighters, stealth jets, and rapid strike tactics. Then slowly he closed it. He picked up his radio. "Tell Air Ops to keep the A-10s fueled and ready. We're going to need more of that kind of flying." He paused. "Yes, even if they're slow. We're not fighting speed. We're fighting persistence." Night fell. Riley stood outside her hangar, watching the stars emerge between faint lines of contrail. One by one, the other jets were being prepped, repainted, polished. Her Warthog still wore the grime of combat like a badge. She preferred it that way. A maintenance tech approached with a rag and a clipboard. "You want us to scrub her down?" She shook her head. "Leave it. Let her breathe." The tech hesitated, then grinned. "She deserves it." He walked off, leaving her alone with the beast. Across base, someone set a speaker down near the barracks and started playing the clip again. A moment, Riley's A-10 screamed overhead, cannon blazing. It had been captured by a helmet cam on the ground. Soldiers gathered beers in hand, watching on repeat. "Right there, right there!" one shouted as the truck exploded. "You see that pass? I felt the rounds before I heard them." They cheered like fans watching a championship replay. But deep down, they knew they were watching something more than tactics and tech. They were watching survival. They were watching salvation. Later that night, Riley returned to her quarters. She sat on her bunk, unzipped her flight suit, and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a note that had been slipped into her locker by one of the crewmen. 4 words scrawled in black ink: "We owe you everything." She stared at it for a long moment, then folded it neatly, placed it between the pages of her flight logbook, and clicked off the light. The next morning, a new assignment brief landed on Colonel Jacobs's desk. Another unit surrounded new terrain, unfamiliar threat. He rubbed his eyes, sipped black coffee, and didn't hesitate. "Send Hawk." The aide blinked. "Sir." "You heard me. If she's got gas, send her." On the flight line, Riley already knew. She'd reviewed the satellite imagery, studied the ridge lines, mapped escape paths, memorized timing intervals. This wasn't luck. This was work grind obsession. As the crew loaded ordnance under her wings, one asked, "Captain, Don't you ever get scared flying that low?" She pulled her gloves tight. "The day I stop getting scared is the day I get sloppy." Helmet on, visor down, cockpit, sealed engines, roared another takeoff, another battlefield, another storm she'd bring with her. In command tents across the theater, the lesson was spreading. Don't underestimate the old bird. Don't question the quiet pilot, and never ever say, "Any jet will do," again. Because sometimes the jet you need is the one no one else believes in, and the pilot flying it believes in nothing but getting the job done. The next mission came without preamble. Early morning haze still hugged the airstrip when Riley opened her locker to find the sealed envelope marked "Eyes Only." Inside, a satellite image, 3 radio transcripts, a grainy infrared image of insurgents planting what looked like man-pads, man-portable air defense systems, along a ridge overlooking a supply route. If they stayed undisturbed, 2 convoys would likely be lost by nightfall. The margin for error was measured in minutes. Riley didn't blink. She geared up in silence, methodically strapping on her sidearm, double-checking her mission notes, drinking half a bottle of lukewarm electrolyte mix, then heading toward her bird. The warthog waited for her like a loyal, battle-scarred wolf. Its skin still wore the pockmarks of the last mission, each one a scar in a story it refused to stop telling. On the tarmac, her crew chief walked beside her. "You know, there's a rumor going around," he said, wiping his palms on his coveralls. "Oh yeah," she asked. "That command's trying to name a new tactical doctrine after you." Riley didn't stop walking. "They don't need a name. They need pilots who will commit." "Still," he said, "it's not every day a warthog makes the colonel question half the air wing doctrine." Riley paused just before the ladder. "Doctrine doesn't mean a damn thing if it can't get boots home." She climbed up, slid into the cockpit, and powered on the systems. HUD lit green. Target coordinates locked. Gun armed. The beast awakened. High above the target zone, cloud cover was light but shifting. She rode a thermal up to 10,000 feet before cutting power and gliding silently toward the ridge. It was risky maneuvering the A-10 without engine thrust, but Riley knew the sound of her engines had a way of alerting the enemy long before she fired. Silence made people panic. At 7,000 feet, she picked up movement through her thermal scope figures, sprinting toward a vehicle with a launcher. Bingo. She pushed the throttle gently enough to coast in, but still remain a ghost above the trees. Thumb hovered over the trigger. Steady, steady. 1 more second. Fire. The cannon let loose. It didn't just fire. It roared with a ferocity that shattered birds from nearby trees. The launcher and half the ridge vanished in a blast of rock and flame. 2 more enemy silhouettes broke from cover running downhill. Riley banked hard, circling them like a hawk with blood on its talons. On the ground, the sudden violence sent insurgents scrambling. Radios crackled in panic, reporting ghost fire from the skies. The few who remained ran for nearby cave shelters they thought could protect them. Riley scanned the hillside. Heat signatures disappeared into the black crevice. "Caves," she muttered. Smart, but not smart enough. She loaded a pair of bunker-busting thermobaric bombs, aimed 6 degrees off-center, to collapse the entrance without causing civilian collateral, and dropped both in quick succession. The resulting detonation wasn't loud. It was deep, a thud that sounded like the mountain itself groaned in anger. Rock and dust poured from the hillside. Riley circled once, watching, waiting. No movement. Satisfied, she pulled away. At FOB Ashburn, the forward ops base closest to the strike, Colonel Jacobs watched the feed live with two visiting NATO observers. "Who's flying?" one of them asked, eyes narrowing. Jacobs didn't answer at first. Instead, he pointed toward the screen. That cave system was used to traffic arms into 3 different provinces. It's been untouched for 2 years. Satellites couldn't even see the entrances. "Then how'd she find it?" the second officer asked. Jacobs let a rare smile curl his lips. "She heard it." Riley was 20 minutes into the flight back when a distress beacon pinged on her secondary monitor, not from her mission zone, but from 10 clicks northeast. Unknown air contact over friendly recon patrol, hostile UAV activity. Suspected. She paused, checked fuel enough for a reroute, and one good burst. "Control, this is Hawk. Diverting to investigate." The radio crackled. "Acknowledged, Hawk. Friendly patrol has lost visual. They're hiding in Dry Gulch. Risk of enemy recon drone is high." "Copy. Show me the terrain." A second later, a topographic overlay flashed on her HUD. The gulch was shallow, sunken in a V-shaped depression, surrounded by loose boulders, perfect ambush territory. As she approached, she lowered her altitude. Suddenly, her threat warning lit up missile lock. Someone on the ground had man pads, and they were aiming for her belly. "Too late," she hissed. She popped flares, twisted the throttle, and dropped into a canyon that barely cleared her wings by 10 feet. Her A-10 scraped a branch as it dove, then screamed through the pass like a bat out of hell. A second lock tone. Another missile fired. Riley yanked the stick, flared again. Flares burst bright behind her as she rolled hard left. The missile streaked behind, barely missing the tail. "Close one," she muttered. "Now it's my turn." She climbed just enough to see the gulch, then rolled over inverted and dove again upside down through the gap. Target in sight, a fighter dragging a shoulder-fired launcher into place. She lined up the shot. Fire. A short burst, just 5 rounds, but that's all she needed. The launcher shattered. The fighter vanished. Riley righted her jet, scanned for more. None. Then a voice broke in on the emergency frequency. "Whoever that was, thank you." "Hawk," she replied. "Next time, don't hide near cliffs." "Noted," came their breathless response. "You really saved our asses again." Just covering the grid. As she flew back for real this time, base control radioed her. "Colonel Jacobs would like to see you in the war room. Priority, debrief." Riley smirked behind her visor. Of course he does. At base, she walked into the war room still wearing her suit. Jacobs stood alone. He didn't waste time. "You saved 2 missions in 4 hours. You spotted caves no one's mapped. You dodged 2 shoulder-launched missiles and neutralized a drone with no support." "Lucky day," she replied dryly. He raised a brow. "You scare me, Jameson." She paused. "Good." He chuckled. "You know what scares me more?" "What?" "That we only have one of you." The following morning brought an eerie stillness over the forward operating base. For once, there were no emergency pings, no scrambling techs, no frantic commanders, just silence and anticipation. Riley sat alone at the edge of the flight line, sipping bitter black coffee from a dented metal mug. Her flight suit was unzipped at the collar, revealing a sweat-darkened t-shirt underneath. A fine layer of desert dust coated everything around her. She didn't mind the quiet. She listened to it because silence never lasted long out here. Behind her, 2 junior pilots whispered near a hangar. She heard one say, "I think she dreams in infrared." The other added, "You don't fly like that without losing something." She ignored them. Truth was, she didn't lose something. She gave it away every time she dropped into danger alone, when others hung back waiting for clearance or cover. Riley didn't ask questions. She answered them with steel and thunder. Inside the war room, Colonel Jacobs reviewed intelligence reports with an expression carved in stone. New satellite images revealed insurgents rebuilding along a different sector grid Delta II, using civilian vehicles and running weapons through ancient caravan routes in the cliffs. Worse, the terrain was unfamiliar. Deep ravines, tunnels under crumbling rock, no clean insertion points for infantry, no drone coverage, no satellite detail. Too much cloud interference, too much damn mountain. They needed eyes in the sky, but not just any. They needed the right kind. He reached for the secure line. Send in Hawk. Riley's A-10 was refueled by the time she walked across the tarmac, helmet tucked under her arm, her boots scuffing dry gravel. Mechanics stood aside like spectators at a ritual. Her Warthog sat there, rugged and scarred, loaded with a mix of thermobaric bombs, GPS-guided bombs, and of course a fresh belt of 30mm cannon shells curling up into the belly of the beast. Her crew chief approached. Same loadout as Echo 3 mostly, she said, checking the tail. Fuel's at 95%. Just be careful. Weather's thick over Delta II. No satellites. You'll be flying blind half the time. She looked up toward the haze building in the east. Wouldn't be the first time. She climbed in, strapped down, flipped switches. The twin engines roared to life. The beast was hungry again. Minutes later, she was airborne, pushing through a ceiling of thick gray clouds. Visibility dropped fast. Her HUD flickered now and then, struggling to stabilize between terrain shifts. She flew low, too low for radar-guided missiles, but high enough to avoid microbursts along the canyons. It was a dangerous game. She played it perfectly. As the cloud cover parted briefly, Riley saw what the intel had missed, a trail of small pickups barely visible beneath camo netting, moving between the cliffs. She counted 6 No-8 vehicles armed, spaced apart. They weren't just hiding. They were rehearsing running drills, perfecting escape patterns. Looks like a training route, she muttered, flipping on her targeting system. No GPS. Manual lock only. Riley smiled. She liked manual. She dove low and fast. The first strike landed dead center, an instant fireball, where a technical truck had once sat. Chaos broke loose. Gunfire spat up from the rocks. One RPG narrowly missed her left wing. No time for fear. She swung wide fast as a bullet looped behind the next group and dropped a second bomb, shattering the canyon wall beside them, burying the next truck in a rain of stone. 2 down, 4 mobile, she reported calmly. No one was listening. She wasn't doing this for command. She was doing this to stop whatever these bastards were planning. On her third pass, she spotted something strange. 2 enemy fighters stood next to a low structure built into the rock, a shed or entry point, dragging a large object under a tarp. They didn't run when they saw her. They knelt. That's when she realized they wanted her to shoot. It was bait. Her threat system suddenly blinked red, lock-on detected, from inside the cliff. That wasn't a training route. It was a trap, and she'd just flown straight into it. Riley yanked the throttle, climbed hard, cut to the right. Too late. A missile launched from inside the cave mouth, trailing smoke. She rolled left. Dumped flares screamed into the clouds. The missile chased. Come on, come on. The Warthog shuddered as the tail caught part of the blast. Not a direct hit, but enough. Warning lights blinked across her panel. She dipped low, leveled out. The controls were sluggish, but the bird was flying. Left stabilizer damaged but intact. Hydraulics struggling but responsive. Not dying today, she said through clenched teeth. Back at the base, red lights flashed in the command tent. Pilot damage report from Hawk. Possible impact. Still airborne, someone called out. Jacobs froze. She's still flying barely, but she's not pulling out. He leaned over the monitor. That same look again, the one he had at Echo 3, a mix of awe and disbelief. She's going back in, isn't she? No one answered. They didn't have to. Riley pulled around, stabilizing her pitch with micro movements. She knew what had to be done. The launcher hidden in the cave wouldn't be easy to hit from the air, not without precision guidance. She had one tool left, a laser-guided bomb tucked under her wing. Manual lock, no margin for error. She flew straight toward the canyon again, slow and steady, ignoring the flickering panel and the groaning jet frame. Her hands never shook. She dropped the bomb directly into the dark opening. It vanished inside. A second later, the mountain opened with a flash of fire and fury coughing debris into the sky. The launcher and anyone near it ceased to exist. She turned toward Home Warthog, limping, smoke trailing but victorious. Colonel Jacobs met her on the tarmac. She popped the canopy unbuckled and climbed down, slow, stiff-legged. Her bird hissed steam. The left wing looked shredded. Jacobs stood with hands on hips. "You okay?" "I will be." "That was a decoy convoy," he said. "They were testing how far we'd chase them. You broke the trap." Riley shrugged. "Didn't like their hospitality." Jacobs studied her. "You were out of comms. We thought you might not come back." She looked him in the eye. "That's your mistake." The medics insisted on checking Riley out after her return from Delta 2. She let them. She knew the drill oxygen levels reaction tests, thermal imaging reflex assessments. They looked for things she knew they wouldn't find. Trauma, hesitation, regret. There was none, just fatigue and something deeper, not weariness but pressure, like a dam behind her ribs, always ready to crack. She knew how to contain it. She didn't think about it. She just flew. Later that night, she sat outside her bunk, cleaning her flight gloves with a toothbrush. The ritual calmed her, removing the dust, the blood, the weight. A voice cut through the dark. "You didn't have to go back in." It was Lieutenant Grayson, fresh out of pilot school, standing awkwardly with a tray of food. She looked up. "If I didn't, someone else would have died." He shifted, unsure. "But with that kind of damage." "I've flown worse." He hesitated, then asked, "What does it feel like the moment you pull the trigger?" She paused, glanced at her gloves. "Final," she said. "It feels final." In the command tent, Jacob stood over a new intelligence report. He tapped the desk rhythmically, eyes moving too fast for comfort. A growing pattern was emerging. Strategic feints. Ambushes, disinformation. The enemy had grown smarter, quieter. They weren't just attacking. They were baiting. "Sir, a voice called. "Command wants a full situational update in 1 hour. They're asking for pilot reports." Jacobs raised a brow. "They want her to brief." "Yes, sir." Word from Joint Command. "They've seen the drone footage, said it's instructional." Jacobs smirked. "Yeah, it's instructional. All right." He scribbled one word in the margin of his report, Hawk. Riley stood before the briefing room wearing her duty blues for the first time in months. They were crisp, clean, and alien. Her call sign wasn't visible. No dirt, no gunpowder, just ribbons, brass and fabric that had never seen metal. She hated it, but she walked in anyway. The room was full: officers, analysts, advisors, some with silver hair, some barely shaving. She stood at the front, clipped the remote, and began. Her tone was flat, efficient, professional. "This is your convoy decoy," she said, displaying drone footage. Vehicle spacing is textbook, but watch their acceleration. They don't push the lead truck. That's your first tell. Next slide. Here's the heat map. Low signature inside the canyon means active cooling systems, hidden launchers. Cave-based, not mobile, not retreating, waiting. She paused. You call that a weakness. I call it intent. Slide. This was my strike pattern, not optimal. Terrain denied ideal lock angles. So I baited the second launcher, flew inside the range ring, forced them to reveal the system. A captain interrupted. You wanted to draw fire. I needed to find the cave. They wouldn't show unless they thought I didn't see it. Another officer raised a brow. And what if they were right? She looked him dead in the eye. Then I'd be dead. Silence. Then Jacobs from the back. And she's not. After the briefing, several officers approached her. One asked if she'd train new pilots in A-10 tactics. Another wanted her for an air-to-ground doctrine advisory panel. Riley just nodded. She had no plans to teach. She had plans to fly. 2 days later, the storm came. Not weather, not artillery, something worse. A refugee convoy. 70 civilians had been ambushed near Grid Zulu 4, trapped between an improvised minefield and a broken ridge. Mortar fire rained down on them from a hidden hillside position. No escort, no armor, no satellite cover, no time. The call came down from top command. Immediate extraction or air cover required. But they had nothing nearby except her. Riley suited up mid-conversation. They're pinned at the valley's bend, a flight officer explained, jogging beside her. There's a ridge with suspected mortar teams, tripods, possibly drones. No air defenses, but no clear sight lines either. Are they moving? No. The front vehicle hit a mine. Casualties unknown. They're boxed in. She slid on her helmet. What's the window? He checked his tablet. 14 minutes until they start getting overrun. Riley glanced at her watch. Then I'm already late. This time, she loaded only what she needed: cluster munitions, high-explosive rockets, and full cannon rounds. Speed was more important than payload. As the Warthog launched, base control relayed. Zulu 4 may have children. Confirmed family units. Watch fire radius. Copy, she replied. I'll be surgical. The landscape over Zulu 4 was unforgiving. Steep hills, narrow ridges, scattered trees made aerial recon difficult. But Riley had learned long ago that difficult was different from impossible. She dipped low engines howling and scanned the hills. Their barely visible muzzle flashes behind camo netting. A mortar tube recoiled. She pulled left and dropped a pair of cluster bombs into the thicket. Direct hit. 4 more flashes on the opposite side. She inverted the A-10, looped low, and opened fire with the cannon. Trees exploded. Dirt erupted. Mortars fell silent. Below her, the convoy started moving again. But as they pushed forward, a second explosion rocked the valley, an IED under the 4th truck. Smoke billowed. Screams followed. From her altitude, Riley saw what the soldiers couldn't: enemy fighters. 10 or more emerging from the rocks. They had flanked the convoy. She didn't ask permission. She dove. The Warthog growled, and then the sky rained fire. In under 2 minutes, the ambush dissolved. She flew so low the soldiers swore they could see her eyes behind the canopy. She made 6 passes, used every round she had, and when she was dry, she circled high, watching until every civilian made it across the ridge. Only then did she return to base. Colonel Jacobs met her on the runway again. I need you to know, he said, if you hadn't launched when you did. She nodded, exhausted. 70 people, he continued. Alive because you didn't wait for orders. Riley looked toward her warthog blackened from smoke, its gun steaming paint, peeling along the nose Art Hawk's wrath. I don't wait, she said. I act. 2 days after the Zulu rescue, Riley sat alone in the hangar long after sunset, eyes fixed on the scorched barrel of her A-10's GAU-8 cannon. The weapon had served her without fail, over towns, through ravines, across kill zones, and now it groaned like an old war dog, begging for rest. She knew the sound well. Her own body made it too. She didn't sleep much anymore, didn't want to. Every time she shut her eyes, the images played like an unwanted reel. Convoys in flames, fighters dissolving into smoke, children screaming from behind sandbags. She could recall them all in exact sequence, and yet she still suited up every time. Because if not her, then who? In the officers' mess, talk shifted from Riley's survival rate to something more uncomfortable. How long can one pilot hold up under this tempo? Someone muttered over mashed potatoes. Another said, she's more machine than human now. Even Jacobs, listening from a corner table, couldn't deny it. Riley was flying nearly double the OPA tempo of any other pilot. She volunteered for missions before they were even announced. Half the time she didn't wait for backup. She was trusted. She was also alone. That morning, something new arrived, an encrypted alert labeled Penumbra, classified eyes only. It came straight from Joint Command. Jacobs read the file and exhaled like he'd taken a punch. Buried inside was a name he hadn't heard in over a year, Argocell. A shadow unit, not insurgents, but professionals, ex-military, ex-intel mercenary, ghosts who took high-value contracts for regimes that didn't want fingerprints. And now they'd been spotted near Sector Bravo 9, within range of a humanitarian aid depot. They weren't just in country, they were hunting. Riley was at the range when Jacobs found her hitting distant metal targets with a sidearm as if she were born with it. He didn't waste time. We have a cell operating near Bravo 9. Not local fighters, not amateurs. She holstered the pistol. How many? Unknown, but intel, says Argocell. High probability. That name alone erased any trace of her fatigue. What's the target? Aid convoy. Doctors, civilians, soft profile. They'll hit it for media impact. When? Jacobs handed her a tablet. They're moving tonight. Riley didn't ask for backup, didn't check the weather. She just said, then I'll fly alone. An hour later, she sat in the cockpit, watching the crew finish final armaments. For this mission, she'd chosen a brutal loadout, dual Mavericks flechette pods, and armor-piercing rounds for the cannon. No distractions, no soft options. She wasn't going in to negotiate. She was going to stop them. A young tech stepped up with the final checklist. He hesitated, then asked quietly, "You ever scared, ma'am?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Every time. And then she took off into the dusk. The Bravo 9 sector was unlike any she'd flown over before, dunes merging with dry riverbeds, forests of abandoned concrete and haze that made even infrared blurry. The aid convoy was already moving, headlights off, crawling forward in a tight formation. They had no idea what was stalking them. Riley switched to thermal scan. There, off the ridge, 6 heat signatures perfectly spaced. Too perfect. Argocell had come prepared. They weren't attacking yet. They were coordinating. She dropped altitude. Her engines screamed against the dark. The first strike was a calculated warning, a flechette spread that tore through a tree line without killing anyone. The figures scattered. Some ran. Others turned and fired RPGs into the air, wildly desperately. She swung wide, high G and came back around for the real run. 2 Mavericks locked on. Fire. Both exploded with precision, reducing enemy positions to dust and fire. And yet, no bodies. Riley frowned. Something wasn't right. Her instincts flared, a half-second too late. Lock-on detected. Missile inbound. The warning barked through her headset. She yanked the stick-released flares rolled to the left. The missile clipped the underside of her fuselage, glancing but damaging. Smoke bled from her starboard engine. She wasn't down, but she wasn't fast anymore either. Still, she climbed. She had to see. She leveled out at 2,000 feet, and then she saw it. The Argosel team wasn't aiming for the convoy, not directly. They were setting a trap for her. 6 new heat signatures appeared, well-camouflaged fighters, armed with laser designators and man-portable missiles. She was the target now, and they were drawing her in with decoys. Riley gritted her teeth. "They want the Warthog," she said aloud. And if they got it, if they shot it down over friendly convoy airspace, it would look like friendly fire, a PR disaster fuel for propaganda. This was strategic. It was personal. She checked her systems. Only 1 Maverick left. No time for finesse. She looped wide high into the moonless dark, then cut her engines briefly. It was a maneuver few dared to try, a ghost dive, nearly silent until the last second. As gravity pulled her into a steep descent, she waited, counting heartbeats. Below, one of the Argosel shooters turned, scanning too late. Her gun lit up the night. The cannon bellowed 30 rounds in under 2 seconds. The shooter vanished. She twisted left, leveled out at treetop level, then locked her final Maverick on a signal source pulsing from the rear command post. Goodbye. Fire. Direct hit. The ridge evaporated. 5 targets down, but the 6th, the last shooter, launched his missile just before she cleared the hill. She didn't see it, didn't hear it, only felt the impact. Her entire aircraft jerked sideways. The world tilted. Alarms howled. Her HUD flickered, then vanished. She was flying blind, and still she kept going. Back at base, comms lit up. Hawk has gone dark. Jacob stared at the screen. "She's alive," he said quietly. "How can you be sure?" "Because they haven't confirmed a kill." 10 minutes passed, then 20, and then a single line crackled through the static on the long-range band. "This is Hawk, bird wounded, mission complete, en route." Jacobs closed his eyes and whispered, "Damn right you are." When Riley landed, the base was silent, not out of fear, out of reverence. Her aircraft was scorched and limping, one wing black with carbon, the front fuselage with a hole the size of a dinner plate, but she stepped out under her own power. Someone tried to clap. She just walked past them and said, "Get her rearmed. We're not done." They grounded her the next morning, not because they didn't trust her, but because her jet could no longer fly. The shrapnel had punctured both engine manifolds. Internal power routing was damaged. Emergency diagnostics showed it was a miracle the A-10 even made it back to base. One more pass, one more second in the air, and she'd have been ash and aluminum in a field of fire. But none of that mattered to Riley. Grounding her meant someone else would fly the next sortie, someone slower, someone not her. Jacobs found her standing in the maintenance bay at 0400 hours a wrench. In one hand, hydraulic oil streaked across her uniform. She wasn't talking, wasn't asking. She was fixing it. "They're ordering in a replacement airframe," Jacobs told her. "Should be here in 72 hours. "I'm not waiting 72 hours. she replied, yanking open a melted panel. He sighed. You realize you're putting her back together with elbow grease and rage, right? She kept working. That's more than most pilots start with. He stepped closer. You're exhausted, Riley. You've been flying redline missions for 2 months without pause. I need you sharp, not stubborn. She stopped for a moment, looked at him, really looked. This isn't about being stubborn. It's about finishing this. Intel confirmed what Riley already suspected. The Argosel cell was preparing their final strike. Their escape route was secured, a private aircraft scheduled to depart from a dirt airstrip near Sector Whiskey 2 in less than 48 hours. Their objective to kill the narrative, destroy the only rural broadcast station still live in the region. It wasn't just signals. It was hope. That station beamed footage of convoy rescues, humanitarian airdrops, even footage of Riley's A-10 carving through mortar teams. Locals had named her Shaheen the Hawk. If Argosel succeeded, they wouldn't just destroy a signal tower. They'd silence a symbol. By noon, base engineers declared her Warthog structurally unsound for combat. Riley didn't care. She rewired electrical flow, manually rebuilt one of the wing actuators with salvaged parts from a decommissioned bird, burned her hands, pulling out a warped panel from the cooling system. By sunset, it passed a startup test. By midnight, the cannon roared in a dry-fire diagnostic, the hangar trembling like thunder at her will. She called Jacobs. It's flying. He didn't argue. He just asked one question. When? She answered. Now. Sector Whiskey 2 was over 200 clicks of barren expanse ridge cuts, dry craters, no infrastructure, no support. Riley flew it alone. She brought fuel pods to stretch range, loaded twin Mavericks, a single J-Dam, a custom heat seeker, and full cannon shells. Her cockpit was patched with duct tape and stripped wiring. Her HUD blinked intermittently, but it flew. So she flew. Below her, the landscape passed like an old photograph, brown hills, snaking gullies, and the ghost of a city once vibrant, now a graveyard. The broadcast tower rose on the horizon, a steel spire surrounded by sandbags, and a small protection detail Robin Hood style, lightly armed, no armor, just volunteers. She switched comms. This is Hawk inbound to Whiskey 2. Any activity? Static, then a scratchy reply. We spotted 3 armored pickups 2 hours ago. South Ridge. Haven't engaged. Copy. Maintain cover. I'll sweep first. She banked right wings, dipping low. South Ridge looked quiet. Too quiet. Thermal scans showed no heat, no IR pings. Riley's instincts screamed. She cut her altitude and slowed, kept the sun at her back, watched for shadow movement. Then she saw it, a glint of metal on canvas, one truck half buried beneath a net of desert sand, then another. 3 vehicles spread in a crescent, all pointing away from the tower. Her mind snapped into gear. They're not going for the station, she muttered. They're waiting for evac. She scanned again. Farther out, 6 kilometers east, a long straight path, gravel flat, an old landing strip with fresh tire tracks, fuel drums, and what looked like a temporary beacon. A plane was coming. They were waiting for it. She dove lower. And it happened from the ground. 2 heat-seeking missiles fired in tandem, one from the ridge, one from behind the station. She had one chance. Riley rolled sharply, dropped flares, slammed left. One missile spiraled off course, flaring out into the sky. The other clipped her wing edge. Sheared metal sent a tremor through her frame, but she stayed up. You missed, she growled. She turned her cannon on the source. The shooter vanished in smoke. She pulled back, locked her JDAM onto the landing strip. The enemy's runway, their escape route lit green on her display. She released the bomb. It dropped like justice from the clouds. Impact. A tower of flames swallowed the airfield. Their exit was gone. They would come to her. And they did. From the sand, 6 hostiles emerged with shoulder launchers and high-caliber rifles. She didn't blink. She looped low, swept them with her cannon. 5 dropped instantly. The 6th fired a round that cracked her canopy, but missed her body. She rolled right, came back, and ended it. Silence returned. On the ground, the station crew emerged from cover, blinking up at the sky, like they had seen a god descend in iron and fire. One of them grabbed a hand-cranked camera. Riley didn't pose. She just hovered, then peeled away low westward, her fuel warning already blinking. Mission complete. Back at base, she landed on fumes. Jacobs was waiting again. This time he didn't say anything. He just offered her a hand. She didn't take it. She stood on her own, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she smiled a real one. That night the footage aired across the region, the burning airstrip, the swooping hawk. Locals watched it in tents, in shelters, underground stations, and on rooftops. Children mimicked the sound of her engines with their mouths. A mural was painted in the center of a refugee camp, her A-10 arcing over a red sun, the word Shaheen beneath. They offered her a medal. She turned it down. She said she didn't fly for ribbons. She flew to end things. But Riley did one thing that surprised them all. She walked into the training tent the next morning, looked at 20 young pilots, some barely through their first mission briefs, and spoke. You want to survive out there. Stop flying like this is a video game. Stop waiting for orders when people are dying. Stop thinking jets win wars. She stepped closer. People do. You do when you stop flying scared. She turned, then added, and if you ever need backup, you know where to find me. The day began gray and cold, the kind of chill that seeps into bones and memories alike. At first light, Riley was already on the tarmac, suited up, but quiet. The hangar was empty except for her Warthog, waiting like an old friend, scarred but ready. Today's mission was different. It wasn't about strikes or rescues. It was about finality. Word had come down. The Argocell cell's last stronghold was a compound deep in the jagged mountains, a fortress nestled in shadows and rumors. It was a place no drone could reach, no satellite could penetrate. Jacobs met her at the edge of the flight line. Today we finish this, he said. Riley nodded. Or we don't come back. The flight up was tense, cold, and silent. Radio chatter was limited to tactical updates, minimal and precise. Approaching the compound, Riley's HUD flickered as the canyon walls swallowed signals. Her certainty, the Argocell cell, had prepared well. They knew she was coming. As she descended, heat signatures popped up, fighters everywhere, shoulder launchers, tripwires, and an array of anti-aircraft guns. The Warthog was outnumbered, but she was never alone. Riley's fingers danced over controls as she deployed countermeasures and lined up her cannon. She dove low, weaving between the jagged rocks like a phantom. Her cannon barked, shredding the first cluster of enemies. Rockets followed fiery streaks, carving paths through the compound's perimeter. Ground teams scrambled, firing blindly, hoping to catch a ghost. Mid-strike, a missile warning blared. She dove, flared, and spun hard to avoid the incoming fire. Her jet shook violently, systems flashing warnings, but she held steady. Then a second missile fired, this one closer. She banked hard, narrowly clearing a rock face. From the canyon floor, a new threat emerged, a stealth drone, hovering silently, laser designator glowing. Riley spotted the dot on her HUD just in time. With a flick, she locked her Maverick missile. Fire. The drone exploded midair in a flash of sparks and smoke. The battle was brutal but precise. Riley's mind was razor-sharp, every move calculated and ruthless. She wasn't just flying the Warthog. She was the Warthog. After minutes that felt like hours, the enemy lines broke. The compound burned. The Argosel cell was finished. She radioed Jacobs. Target destroyed. Returning to base. Copy, Hawk. We're waiting. Back at base, the mood was different. Riley walked from the jet, her flight suit stained with soot and sweat. A small group had gathered: pilots, medics, engineers. Jacobs was at the front. He stepped forward. "Jameson, you've done what no one thought possible." She shook her head. "It's not me. It's every pilot who refused to quit." He smiled. "We owe you more than medals." Weeks later, Riley stood on a stage at the Pentagon, accepting the Distinguished Flying Cross. She spoke quietly, but firmly. "I fly because people need me to fly. I fight because people need me to fight. And I come home because I want to make sure someone else gets to do the same." The audience was silent. She finished. "War isn't about jets or weapons. It's about people." Back home, Riley visited a school in her old neighborhood. Children stared wide-eyed at her flight jacket and helmet. One asked, "Are you a superhero?" She smiled. "No, just someone who refused to stop." The colonel, who once said, "Any jet will do," never forgot the day the A-10 showed up first. He went pale because he knew that sometimes legends are built on iron courage, and one pilot willing to fly when everyone else hesitates. Riley's story wasn't just about an A-10. It was about will, determination, hope, and the truth that no machine, no matter how powerful, could replace the heart of a pilot who refuses to quit. In the heart of this gripping tale of Captain Riley Jameson, the fearless hawk piloting her battered A-10 Warthog, lies a profound life lesson that resonates far beyond the battlefield. Never underestimate the power of persistence and self-belief in the face of doubt and dismissal. When Colonel Jacobs casually declared, "Any jet will do," he paled at the sight of the A-10 arriving first, not because it was sleek or stealthy like the Raptors or F-15s, but because it embodied raw grit, the kind that turns underdogs into legends. Riley, often overlooked in a world favoring speed and sophistication, dove into chaos time and again, her hands steady on the controls, her focus unbreakable. She didn't just fly missions. She owned them, dodging missiles, dismantling traps, and saving lives with surgical precision and unyielding resolve. This story tugs at our emotions, reminding us of those moments in our own lives when we've been written off, perhaps in a job, a relationship, or a personal dream, deemed too slow, too outdated, or simply not enough. Yet, like Riley's Warthog, scarred but steadfast true value shines through action, not appearance. It's a heartfelt call to embrace our inner old birds, to persist when the world expects us to falter, and to prove that courage isn't about being the fastest. It's about showing up, staying low, and fighting with everything we've got. In a world quick to judge, Riley teaches us that salvation often comes from the unexpected, and hope is forged in the fire of determination. Her quiet professionalism, refusing medals for the sake of the job done, evokes tears of admiration and inspiration, urging us to reflect. What battles are we avoiding because we fear we're not the right jet? Let this story move you to action in your daily life. Persist, believe, and soar against the odds. If this tale stirred something in you, drop a comment below. What's your A-10 moment? where persistence turned the tide. Share your story. We'd love to hear it and build this community of resilient warriors together. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another epic narrative that ignites your spirit. Your support keeps these stories flying high. Thank you.